9 days. That's how long it took for Dante Reyes to go from sleeping in his car to holding the keys to an apartment he'd signed the lease on himself. Not 9 years. Not 9 months. 9 days. And when people hear that number, they assume there's a trick to it. A lottery ticket. A rich uncle. A crypto coin that mooned at the right moment. There wasn't. What Dante had was something so small, so unremarkable, that for 34 years of his life, he never once considered it a skill. He thought it was just him, a thing he did without trying. The way some people are tall or left-handed or ticklish behind the knee. Dante Reyes remembered names. Not just remembered them, used them, said them back to people within seconds of hearing them and meant it every time and made the person saying it feel, for just a second, like the most specific, most seen human being in the room. This is the story of what happened when a man with nothing but that one habit walked into a city that had already written him off. To understand day one, you have to understand the year before it. Dante had worked at a warehouse outside Houston for 6 years. Forklift certified, reliable, the guy who covered shifts nobody else wanted. Then the warehouse consolidated with a bigger distribution center in Baytown, and 40 people got a 2-week notice and a pamphlet about unemployment benefits. He tried. He wants that part remembered clearly, because the story people tell about men like Dante usually skips it. He filled out 60-some applications over 4 months. He sold his tools. He sold his truck, the one thing he actually loved, for $1,100 to a stranger on Facebook Marketplace who lowballed him because he could see in Dante's face that he needed the money faster than he needed the fight. He fell 2 months behind on rent. Then 3. His landlord, not a cruel man, just a tired one running a fourplex on thin margins himself, gave him until the end of the month. The end of the month came. Dante spent his first night in his car in the parking lot of a 24-hour Walmart on the southwest side of Houston. Seat reclined as far back as it would go. A hoodie balled up against the window for a pillow. He was 34 years old. He had $412 to his name. And the specific, quiet horror of that first night wasn't the discomfort of the seat or the heat, still radiating off the asphalt at 11 p.m. It was the thought that kept circling, low and constant, like a fly he couldn't swat. Nobody in this entire city knows where I am right now. Nobody would notice if I just stopped. He didn't stop. He just didn't know yet what was going to keep him from it. Dante woke up at 6:40 in the morning with a stiff neck and a bladder that wouldn't wait, and walked into the Walmart to use the bathroom and buy the cheapest coffee they sold. The woman working the register that morning had a name tag that said Gloria. She looked exhausted in the specific way of someone on hour 6 of an 8-hour shift, scanning items with the flat, practiced blankness that register work eventually carves into a person's face. Dante set his coffee down, glanced at the tag. Morning Gloria. Rough one already. She looked up, which people mostly didn't do to her, he could tell, because her whole posture shifted a half-inch, like someone had adjusted a picture frame that had been hanging slightly crooked for years. Girl, you have no idea, she said, and laughed. A short, surprised laugh. The kind that escapes before a person decides whether they're in the mood to laugh. They talked for 90 seconds. He learned she had 2 kids and a double shift and a car that made a sound she was scared to ask a mechanic about because she already knew the answer would cost more than she had. He paid for his coffee, said her name again on the way out. Have a good one, Gloria. And she said, without thinking about it, the thing that changes everything that follows in this story. You too, baby. Come back and see me. He didn't know it yet, but he would. Day 2. Dante went back. Not out of strategy. Out of the plain, uncomplicated fact that Gloria had been kind to him and he wanted to see a kind face again. She remembered him. Hey, coffee guy. Dante, he said, holding out his hand this time. Since we're doing this every morning now, apparently. Gloria. She shook it, smiling. Guess we are. He asked about the kids. She'd mentioned a daughter with a school project due Friday, a diorama, something about the water cycle, and Dante, unprompted, asked how it turned out. Gloria blinked. You remembered that? You said it like it mattered, Dante said. Simple. Not performed. That's when Gloria told him something that would matter more than either of them understood in that moment. Her cousin managed the loading dock at a restaurant supply distributor 15 minutes away, and they were short 2 people because someone had quit without notice. "You know your way around a forklift?" she asked. "6 years, Dante said. "Let me call him." This is the part of the story that people misunderstand when they hear it secondhand. They think Gloria helped Dante because he was likable, charming. That word gets used a lot, and it's wrong, or at least it's incomplete, because charm is something you perform at someone. What Dante did wasn't performance. He paid attention, specifically, to the actual particular details of an actual particular person, and then he proved he'd paid attention by bringing those details back up later, unprompted, days after most people would have let them evaporate. Anybody can say, "How's it going?" to a stranger. That costs nothing and means less. Almost nobody, walking into a Walmart at 6:40 in the morning with $400 to their name and nowhere to sleep that night, remembers that the cashier mentioned her daughter's water cycle diorama, and asks about it 2 days later like it actually mattered to them. That is not charm. That is a discipline. And like every discipline, it compounds. Day 3. Dante interviewed at the restaurant supply distributor. The hiring manager, a clipped, busy man named Wallace who'd clearly rather be doing anything else that morning, ran through the interview at warehouse manager speed until Dante, near the end, asked him something almost nobody asks hiring managers. "What's the hardest part of this job that people don't figure out until they've already started?" Wallace paused. Actually paused, mid-motion, pen hovering over the clipboard. "Huh," he said. "Nobody's ever asked me that." He answered honestly, something about the loading schedule shifting without warning, about drivers who show up irritated and need to be managed as much as the freight does. Dante listened, nodded, said his name, Wallace, twice more before the interview ended. Each time naturally, each time landing. He got the job. Started the next morning. $11 an hour, which sounds like nothing until you remember what he'd had the week before, which was nothing exactly. Day 4. He was still sleeping in the car. This is the detail that gets lost when people tell the story fast because it ruins the clean shape of it, the idea that things simply got better once he got the job. They didn't. Not immediately. Dante worked his first full shift at the distributor, came back to the Walmart parking lot that night, reclined the seat, and lay there with an ache in his lower back that 6 years on a forklift had never quite produced the way one night in a Honda Civic could. But something had shifted that he couldn't name yet. He had a job. He had Gloria, who now saved him a stale but free pastry from the day-old bin most mornings, sliding it across the counter like it was nothing, waving off his attempt to pay. He had Wallace, who'd started saying "Morning, Dante," instead of just nodding at new hires the way he usually did. He had, in 4 days, gone from a man nobody would notice the absence of, to a man 3 separate people would notice was missing if he simply stopped showing up. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, almost everything. Most people who feel completely alone are not actually friendless. They are simply unseen, and being unseen for long enough starts to feel identical to being alone. Dante had started to be seen again, not because his circumstances had changed, because he had kept doing the one thing that made other people feel like their circumstances mattered to somebody. Day 5. The distributor's regular deliveries included a stop at a 52-unit apartment complex management office, dropping off cleaning supplies for their maintenance staff. Dante wasn't scheduled for that route. He was still learning the yard, but the regular driver called in sick, and Wallace, without much thought, said, "Reyes, you're up." The property manager who signed for the delivery was a woman named Carol Whitfield, early 60s, sharp-eyed, the kind of person who had clearly run this complex long enough to have zero patience for wasted time. Dante set the boxes down, checked the paperwork, and instead of just handing over the clipboard, glanced at the nameplate on her desk. "Carol, these go in the usual spot, or you want them somewhere else this time?" She looked up, mildly surprised. 5 days, Dante said. Used to run a forklift out in Baytown before the warehouse consolidated. This is temporary. Building back up. Carol studied him for a second longer than the moment required. "You got an apartment out here?" she asked. Dante hesitated for exactly 1 beat. Then he told her the truth. Not the polished version. The actual one. "No, ma'am. I've been sleeping in my car for about a week and a half. Got the job 4 days ago. Working on the rest." He said it plainly. No performance of shame, no performance of bravado either. Just the fact, laid down like the boxes he'd just set on her floor. Carol was quiet for a moment. You have any idea how many people come through this office and lie to me about way smaller things than that? She finally said. No, ma'am. Most of them. Almost all of them. She tapped her pen against the desk once. I've got a studio that opened up on Thursday. Previous tenants skipped on the lease, left it a mess, but it's move-in ready as of Monday. $650 a month. First month's discounted for the trouble of the short notice. She wrote something on a card and slid it across the desk. Come back Thursday. Bring your first pay stub and whatever deposit you can scrape together. We'll work something out on the rest. Day 6. Dante almost didn't go back. This is the part he doesn't tell most people because it complicates the clean version of the story, the version where the universe simply rewards a good man for being good. The truth is he spent that entire day at work distracted, running the numbers in his head. $650 a month. He had $430 now, minus what he'd need for gas, minus what he owed on a payday loan he'd taken out 2 weeks before everything collapsed, the kind of loan that eats itself alive with interest if you don't kill it fast. He did the math 9 different ways and none of them worked cleanly. There was a very real, very rational version of that day where Dante decided the apartment was a trap. A way to get his hopes up before the numbers crushed him again, the way numbers had crushed him for a year straight. He almost threw the card away. He was standing over a trash can outside the distributor at the end of his shift, card in hand, when Gloria's voice came back to him. Not a specific thing she'd said. Just the plain fact of her. The woman who'd saved him pastries and called him baby and looked up from a register like his presence had adjusted something crooked in her day. He thought. She saw something in me before I had anything to show her. Carol did too. Maybe the thing they're seeing is real, and I'm the only one in the room still arguing with it. He put the card in his pocket instead of the trash. Day 7. He went to Gloria first. Not for money, he wanted to be clear about that later whenever he told the story. He went because he needed to say something out loud to a person who had shown him kindness, and Gloria had become, over the course of 1 week, the closest thing he had to that in the entire city. I might have a place, he told her, sliding his coffee money across the counter. Studio. $650. I don't know if I can make the numbers work. Gloria was quiet for a second. Then she reached under the register and pulled out a battered spiral notebook. The kind with a faded floral cover, corners soft from handling. I want to show you something, she said. Don't laugh. Inside were names. Pages and pages of names, dates, small notes. Marcus, birthday March. Anna, son starting kindergarten. Old man with the cane, likes to talk baseball, ask about Astros first. I started keeping this 11 years ago, Gloria said, because I noticed nobody remembers anybody in this town. Everybody's rushing. And I figured if I'm going to stand behind this register for 8 hours a day anyway, I might as well be somebody who sees people while I do it. She closed the notebook. You do that thing naturally. I had to build a system for it. But baby, that thing you do, that's not small. That's the rarest currency there is, and you're just walking around spending it for free without realizing what it's worth. She reached into the register drawer, past the cash, into a small zippered pouch she kept behind it, and pulled out 3 folded $20 bills. I'm not giving you this because I feel sorry for you, she said, pressing it into his hand before he could protest. I'm giving it to you because I've watched you become somebody worth investing in over exactly 1 week, and that's the fastest return I've ever seen in my life. Go get your apartment. Day 8. He went back to Carol's office with his first pay stub, $60 from Gloria, whatever he had left, and Wallace's phone number scrawled on the back of the card in case Carol needed to confirm his employment. She didn't call Wallace. She'd already decided. You came back, she said, like that alone had settled something. I came back, Dante confirmed. They worked out the numbers together, a payment plan on the deposit spread across his first 2 paychecks, an arrangement Carol would later admit she almost never offered anyone, but had decided, watching him do the math out loud with total honesty instead of trying to talk his way around the shortfall, that Dante was the kind of tenant worth the small risk. One thing, she said, sliding the lease across the desk. You know, my assistant property manager quit last month. I've been covering 2 jobs for 6 weeks and I am exhausted. You interested in learning the paperwork side once you're settled? Extra hours, better pay than the loading dock. Dante looked up from the lease. Carol, I don't have any property management experience at all. I know, she said, but you remembered my name on day 1, and you told me the truth about sleeping in your car when a lie would have been so much easier. I can teach paperwork to anybody. I can't teach the other thing. That you already have. Day 9. Dante signed the lease at 4:50 in the afternoon. Sitting across from Carol's desk in the same chair he'd sat in 5 days earlier when he told her the truth that changed everything. He walked into the studio that evening for the first time. Empty except for a mattress Carol had thrown in from a unit that was getting replaced anyway, and a window unit air conditioner that rattled but worked. He stood in the middle of the empty room for a long time. 9 days. For $112 had become a job, an apartment, a payment plan, and the beginning of a career path he hadn't known existed a week and a half earlier, and none of it had started with money or luck or a connection he already had in his back pocket. It had started with a name tag that said Gloria, and the plain, unglamorous decision to actually read it and say it back like it mattered. He drove to the Walmart parking lot one last time that night. Not because he needed to sleep there, but because he wanted to see it empty from the outside, the way you go back to look at a hospital room after you've been discharged. He sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes. Same seat, same car, same parking lot, completely different man. Let me ask you something. When's the last time you said someone's name back to them like it was worth remembering? Not the automatic version, the "hey, how's it going" that dissolves the second it leaves your mouth. The real version. The one where you actually hold onto a detail about another human being and hand it back to them later on purpose so they know they registered. Dante Reyes had nothing when this story starts. No savings, no home, no plan that was working. What he had was a habit so small he'd never once thought to call it a skill. And in 9 days, that habit built him a job, an apartment, and the beginning of a career, one person at a time. Gloria said it best, and it's worth repeating slowly. That's the rarest currency there is. And most people are walking around spending it for free without realizing what it's worth. You do not need capital to start over. You do not need a connection, a degree, or a lucky break. You need to notice people. Actually notice them, their names, their kids' science projects, the small true things they mention in passing that almost everyone else lets evaporate. Do that consistently for 9 days, for 9 months, for the rest of your life, and watch how many doors that nobody else can see start quietly opening in front of you. Start with the very next name you hear. Say it back like it matters. Because it does. If the story landed somewhere real in you, send it to someone who needs to hear that they already have what it takes, even with empty pockets. Leave a comment. Who's the last person who remembered your name when you needed to be seen? And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. We tell them every week. The next one might be the one you needed most.